What's up, welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Civil War, the new dystopian action film from Alex Garland and A24. This film stars Kirsten Dunst, Wagner Moura, Cailee Spaeny, Stephen McKinley Henderson. And yeah, this film obviously has a lot of anticipation, a lot of attention on it because it's an Alex Garland film. Alex Garland, one of our most transgressive and provocative filmmakers. I've been a big fan of his for some time. Of course, I love Ex Machina. That's one of my top 10 movies of the 2010s. I love Annihilation as well. Of course, Garland also an accomplished screenwriter. Yeah, Civil War has got a lot of attention because of its subject matter. Of course, portraying a fictional, in the future, American Civil War, the second Civil War in the United States, and depicting that in a harrowing detail. And that has, of course, come under fire, come under criticism for its timing during an election year and just the general state of American society. And I have to say, this is a movie I liked quite a bit, and I'm going to get into why. But I just wanted to say, it's kind of frustrating that we're doing this thing again with a movie. This is going to open like to $20 million. This is not a blockbuster in the traditional sense. And we've done this before. Remember The Hunt? Remember Todd Phillips' Joker? We ascribe these things to films and how they're going to affect reality, when in turn, these are actually movies designed to make you think and entertain. And I think Civil War certainly does that. And I think anything else being ascribed to this movie's impact or timing, I think is just kind of off base and dumb, to be honest. Despite all that, Civil War is a transgressive film. This is a visceral, gritty, violent action film, and unsurprisingly, the depiction of a second American Civil War in modern times is a very harrowing and upsetting watch, but because it's from Alex Garland, this is also incredibly riveting. This is a thrilling movie, and I actually was most impressed with what this film says about the ethics of journalism during times of crisis. I think that is the actual message that's important to take away from Civil War. A lot's been made about this movie being apolitical and actually not saying enough, but I think it's actually saying a lot in that subtext, which is right there with its lead characters, which are all photojournalists. This is a film with amazing set piece after amazing set piece and great acting across the board, and yet you're not rooting for any character on screen. And ambiguity is kind of part of the appeal. And some people would use that as a criticism for Alex Garland. He's never specific enough, they would say. But I think, to me, Civil War makes its message pretty clear. And even if you're not interested in what Civil War has to say about society, it's still a gripping action movie. I think the set pieces are great. I think the tension is consistent. And the world building is actually pretty subtle because it's not going to tell you the origins of this Civil War. That's not what this movie is interested in, but there's enough of it sprinkled in, I think, to really hold your attention. A lot's been made in the lead up to Civil War about the plausibility of its premise, which is that you have these separatist forces breaking off from the United States called the Western Forces, the Western Alliance, and those forces are in fact California and Texas, and they're of course also supported by Florida, which is a separate group. And on paper, sure, California's blue, Texas is red. There's also a lot of Republicans, conservative types that live in California. I don't know. I was thinking it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. They're two great economic powers, two great energy producers. It wasn't a big stretch to me, even if on its face it seems far-fetched. And I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I think a lot of people watching Civil War will just kind of be hung up on the technicalities, the whys, the whats, and that's never something Alex Garland would ever give you in one of his movies. So I understand people being hung up on that, but it's kind of besides the point because this is a movie with a different message in mind beyond just portraying something fictional. Again, they kind of disperse some stuff here and there, right? We learn that Nick Offerman's president character, and Offerman's, really not in the movie too much, but Nick Offerman's president character had a third term. All the journalists who want to interview him before he gets taken down by the Western forces, they want to interview him, but they expect him to not be good. He has to be a scumbag. So he's not portrayed in a good light, right? Something name dropped, the Antifa massacre. There's a lot of stuff there. The war is also well underway. There's no cell signal. The interstates are fucked up. There's been bombs everywhere. Tons of bloodshed. Tons of really breakdown of society in many respects. What you expect from dystopian fare. And that's kind of all you get. But to me, I think it's enough because it's really a movie characterized by a series of really strong set pieces. I think all of them are great. We're introduced to our characters in this early set piece in New York City, which involves some kind of conflict, some kind of protest involving police, involving civilians. We don't know the origin. And that's where we meet Kirsten Dunst character Lee, who's this famous veteran, renowned war photojournalist, and her partner Joel, played by Wagner Moura. And they encounter there Cailee Spaeny's character, Jessie, who's obviously a very young, I think she's 23 in the movie, very young, aspiring war photographer who's actually inspired by Lee, someone she knows through her fame. And they also meet up after that conflict, which ends with bombs literally being dropped and all of them barely living. They meet up with one of their old colleagues they've known for some time, Sammy, played by Stephen McKinley Henderson. And lo and behold, they all end up meeting up, and they're going to travel down south, travel to Charlottesville, travel to Washington, D.C., and try and be there to document the end, because the war is, at the climax. The Western forces are going to win. The United States president will be deposed and likely killed, and that's kind of their motivation. So you have that one set piece, and we get introduced to the characters there, and then from there, there's just a lot, it really builds. I mean, there's, I think, a really harrowing, tense second set piece, which involves the journalists following a group of rebel forces fighting and then going on a raid and killing, U.S. soldiers. It's close quarters, and you're watching the journalists embed themselves with the forces, with the individual squads as they're in the middle of combat. From there, we're kind of introduced to what motivates these people, and that's really what this movie is about. You have these photojournalist characters, whether they're the veterans or someone brand new like Jessie, and they are motivated to document. They are motivated to get that shot, ideally get the scoop, get the interview with the president before he's, kaput. But they don't stop to help either side. They don't really seem to even have an interest in the outcome, despite the fact that it affects them. They are Americans as well. And I think that's kind of what's so interesting about this movie, just this kind of ethical quagmire of what you should do in that situation when you're that kind of person, or even if you're not, for that matter. They encounter a lot of atrocities, seeing people strung up, seeing dead bodies hanging from an overpass, militias kind of patrolling around. I think it's meant to inflame, it's meant to make you think, but it's pretty graphic and, again, transgressive, as we expect from Garland. And I think, for an American viewer, seeing something like that, ostensibly your own people, your own society, I think that's what makes it so, propulsive. Of course, we're in a time of conflict elsewhere in the world. People know this. And I think to some, the apolitical nature of these characters, these journalists who literally are not taking a side. And the movie is also really not leaning one way or the other in terms of who the audience should be rooting for. To some, that is, cowardly. But to me, I don't know. I think the presentation of that quagmire, I think, is really thought-provoking. And again, the movie is executed on at such a great level that it continues to hold your attention and maintain that tension, even if maybe you're getting hung up on some stuff. So from there, we have additional set pieces, one involving snipers, one involving an amazing scene with Jesse Plemons, who we don't even really understand his identity, but that is a really scary scene. Probably one of the prescient moments in terms of what it means to be an American and whether that actually gets to keep you alive or not. And I mean, that's a really tense scene. And then it really compounds into the final act, where we literally watch the raid on Washington, D.C. We literally watch a Western Forces soldier fire a javelin rocket at the Lincoln Memorial. We watch, helicopters fly around the National Mall and then they literally assault the White House, right? And that is just kind of, harrowing stuff. Again, just like when the White House blew up in Independence Day 25 years ago, it's stark imagery, especially to an American viewer. And I was pretty entertained the whole time. I think the cast is really something. And honestly, it's a huge Devs reunion, funny enough. Of course, Devs, Alex Garland's FX on Hulu series from 2020. Spaeny, Henderson, Offerman, smaller roles from Sonia Mizuno and Jin Ha, who plays one of the snipers. All Devs alums, pretty funny. And of course, you have Kirsten Dunst reuniting with Jesse Plemons again on screen, just like in Power of the Dog. Steve McKinley Henderson, always good, really just one of our great, like, elite character actors right now. He has just amazing presence these days. Cailee Spaeny, I think, is expertly cast because she's both very young looking, very precocious, and also very small in frame. So her ability to portray a green, brand new war photographer is just very convincing, and she's a great actor. Wagner Moura, I think, does an awesome job as Joel because he has this kind of, there's an edge, there's a thrill to being, literally in the mud with the conflict as it's happening, doing his job. And then you have Kirsten Dunst as Lee, who has this kind of steely resolve, this veteran moxie, but then her feelings about things begin to change as she experiences all the conflict and tragedy that they continue to find on their quest to get to DC. So yeah, ultimately, to me, Civil War is a big success. I think the ethical presentation in the movie is really thought-provoking. I think to some, maybe the commentary doesn't quite get deep enough or specific enough to them, but I honestly, to me, it really worked. Cast is amazing, and it's also like the biggest Garland film ever. Like the legit, like substantial action set pieces, really great sound design, really convincing production design as well. You feel like you're in Washington D.C. watching that shit burn, and the cast, unsurprisingly, really dynamite top to bottom. So Civil War, I think it's a must watch, and Alex Garland made some noise in a Guardian interview saying that he was kind of disillusioned with filmmaking and would not make movies anymore. I'm curious, suspicious if that's really the case, because he's kind of on the books for some stuff. I mean, he was going to write 28 years later, the long-awaited sequel, which will be directed by Danny Boyle. That was announced in January. And then just like 2 weeks ago, his next movie, Warfare, was announced alongside Ray Mendoza, a former soldier. Ray Mendoza actually was the military supervisor for Garland on Civil War. So Garland's been attached to some stuff. Maybe he's going to stop directing and lean back into screenwriting and writing in general, perhaps outside of movie making. Of course, he came up as a writer first. That would not shock me, but he seems to have some projects still in the can. So we'll see how serious he ends up being about that moving forward. But it would be a shame if Alex Garland stopped making movies, because whether you like him or you don't, there's not a lot of people like him, and he's making a lot of interesting stuff. And even his last movie, which was definitely his least successful commercially and critically, Men from 2022, even a movie like that, at least there was a big swing, So he's a guy that I think deserves to continue to make films if he wants, and I'm sure we'll find out more about that in time. But yeah, let me know, how'd you feel about Civil War? Were you as riveted as I was? Were you less impressed? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.